what are you preparing to do to engage with the audience?
Um, I think it starts with, like you said, that inspiration. Like, I think it's inspiration, but then also experiences. That's like a good combination of how at least my work is created. Um, I might like similar to like seeing other artists. Like I'm inspired by Morgan. Like watching her do her thing, watching Ave, watching Quiet Kid, watching plenty of other poets as well. Do they work? It's like wow, that touched me. You know what I mean? Or even like you see me at Lacey's event, the exhibition that happened, and even going to museums and being at galleries, I might be inspired just by an art piece. And just societal issues, you know what I mean? Different things that might be happening politically, socially, economically. And again, my own experiences, my childhood, different mistakes I might have made, different triumphs or successes. A lot of those get kind of pushed into my work, really. And so as I meditate and sit and reflect, and it may be a book that might trigger a thought that comes to mind. It's like, oh, I should write about that. And so I sit with thoughts. I meditate. I got a little notebook. So actually, this little notebook right here, like when I have a thought, I write it down and just let it sit. I think sometimes we can be in the process of wanting to create just to make it be something. But there's also joy I found in just allowing the art to live for a minute by itself, like without touching it. And as I'm preparing for a show, preparing for open mic, um, capital S. Yeah, the words kind of the poems write themselves. I'm like, I think for me, my art has taken a spiritual route to where it's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more free flowing. To where I promise you, the poems just come. I don't, I don't force them. I don't uh, overstudy. I do. It's good to study your craft and practice and the like. But when I'm inspired, I get to work, I go into the lab, what I call it, and then after that, it creates a life of its own, and then it lives. And so as I get ready to interact with other artists or interact with the audiences, um, I call it like it's in my body at that point. Like it becomes a living part of who I am. So by the time I'm actually performing it or saying it, then it's alive, and people are picking up on those living words at that point.
All right, all right. Morgan, tell me about what you do, what type of planning and preparation, thought process you're going through when you're preparing for a poetry open mic or a poetry slam or a poetry event.
Really, I'd say 2022 was like the first year I started actually writing about myself. 2022, I contacted Khalil like, hey, how did you start writing about your childhood trauma and stuff like that? Because I really wanted to dive into myself and dive into my childhood trauma. So I think that for me, what really prepares me for like open mic or a performance or anything of that nature is really, you know, getting a feel of what I want to say and how I want the audience to be impacted. I think that's super important. As an artist, we have a responsibility to reflect the times, like you said before, but also be able to, you know, open or cultivate mindsets or influence mindsets to not just think in one way, but giving them options and opportunities to think another way. So I think that me really just thinking about and meditating on what I want to actually say and how I want to influence this audience or inspire this audience, depending on what type of show it is, because you also have to analyze what kind of show it is and who your audience is prior to before you start performing just anything, because some people um, aren't able to open up their minds that far to think to some limits of where poetry can go, because it can get super deep. It's very vulnerable. Poetry is a very vulnerable craft um, and medium of art. So I think that once you start hitting certain things and hitting certain emotions on the tail or hitting certain traumas, um, or diving into those traumas, it can get pretty uncomfortable for some people who haven't, went that deep within themselves yet. So I think that one thing for me is just being able to analyze the audience. Um, I've come to a point where I haven't felt nervous because I feel like I've been doing it for so long, and I feel like I've shared all my deepest, darkest secrets with audiences now. So it's kind of like it's not like a nerve wracking thing. It's more so just analyzing what type of crowd there may be, and just really seeing how I want to reflect the times in that moment.